analyst assigned to CalVIP, and I've been working on CalVIP for a few years now. And I just want to congratulate everyone for joining the CalVIP team. I'm here to make sure, as well as the other with Katrina and Stephanie, to make sure everybody's successful. And please give me a call or email me if you have any questions. And I just want to say, have a great day, and let's have a great success in CalVIP.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, so today is going to look a little bit like this. Helene will present the principles of effective I put communication, but it's intervention. Then I will present the programmatic responsibilities, and we will end our day with grantee introductions, those of you that did not go on day 1 or day 2. And then we will have any questions or answers that you guys might have to wrap up the 3-day orientation. So Helene, I will stop sharing my slides so then you can jump right into yours.
Okie dokie. Let's see. Okay, so thumbs up if you can see my PowerPoint. Yay, thank you. Okay. So good morning, everyone. As you may have heard, I'm not going to be presenting on the effective communication, though that will be another day if she wants to do day 4. But my name is Helene Zettner, and I'm a field representative with the BSCC and one of Katrina's colleagues. Katrina asked me to share with you some really high-level information about 40 hours worth of training condensed down into about an hour about effective interventions. And I was so impressed over the last couple days listening to your program components, and can't wait to hear the next 11 today, and all the great work that you're doing in implementing the CalVIP program. So some of these concepts may not be new to you listening to the interventions that you're using. Seeing some familiar faces. Some of you have heard me talk about this content before, and a few of you even as recently as last week. Sorry. But this information, if it may be new to you, maybe some of you have heard some of the concepts but not sure how to apply them. And then hopefully that regardless of whatever stage you're in learning about effective interventions, you'll find a nugget or two as a takeaway, a good reminder of things to do, or even validating what you're doing currently in your programs. Just so you know that if you have any questions about any of this material, BSC staff can assist in getting your project to be as effective as possible. And our goal is the same as yours, is to provide the most effective services to reduce recidivism and provide a better quality of life for your participants. So taking from Stephanie on day 1, if you take a sip of your beverage each time I say recidivism or recidivate, I promise you will be very well hydrated today. Okay, and this is going to be the same thing as the other day where it may not advance. Nope. Sean, I'm having the same problem I did the other day where I'm showing the PowerPoint, but it's not advancing.
Gotcha. So click on the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, I did.
And
okay, I'll just do
right.
it manually. Okay, I'll just do it manually on that way. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I said, some of the information materials that I'm presenting today are not new. They're from the work of Dr. Ed Latessa and the staff at the University of Cincinnati at the Corrections Institute. And as we go through this presentation, I want to point out that there will be some terminology that is heavily justice system based, as the information basically comes from correction-based research and the meta-analysis and the work done by the Corrections Institute. So a brief background, about 7 years ago, UCCI staff and Dr. Latessa came out and certified several BSCC staff in monitoring programs using the CPC, which is the Correctional Programs Checklist. And so just quick show of thumbs up or hands. How many of you have either had a CCP done on your program before or have had training done by either Dr. Latessa or his staff? So I know some of you might have, but if you have, great. And if you have not, hopefully you can learn a little something by this presentation. So if you had a CPC done on your program, it takes about 4 of our staff about a day and a half to 2 days to complete it. And it looks at all the program holistically in 5 different areas: program leadership, staff characteristics, client assessment, treatment characteristics, and quality assurance. And the result gives you a baseline score in each of those 5 areas that helps the program make a blueprint to assess short-term and long-term changes in their program that they can put into place to make their program more effective. Oops, wrong way. Okay. Okay, evidence-based. What does it mean? So, oh, let's see, now it's not. Okay, got it. Sorry, Katrina, having technical issues, rainy day. So here we go. So what does evidence-based mean? There are 2 types of evidence. There's anecdotal and there is empirical. And anecdotal, we all know that those types of examples. It is the lowest form of evidence, and it's based on a particular individual or a situation that's for the most part generalized to a greater population. So after looking at the data, it may have been only 1 or 2 memorable individuals that made it seem like it was a more widespread scenario. So the information is not based in facts or careful study. It's non-scientific. The observations don't provide proof, but they may assist in telling the whole story or giving a full picture for research efforts. It reports observations in an unscientific way, and it's casual observations or indicators rather than a rigorous or scientific analysis. And most of the time, this information is passed along by word of mouth and not documented in a scientific way. So, where anecdotal information gets problematic is when people make decisions solely based on it. So, for example, if you're like me, especially during COVID and you've put on the COVID-19, you might be looking at diet supplement websites and you'll find tons and tons of testimonials that they're all based on anecdotal evidence. And they seem to lend some credit to the idea that each diet treatment will be wildly effective and you'll be successful in it, especially when you want that outcome of weight loss to be true. But unfortunately, I know that they're not. Another type of evidence is empirical, and empirical data is considered true data that can be observed by many people and all will agree to what they've observed. So a good example of this is a thermometer. So no matter who observes the thermometer, it still displays the same temperature, regardless of who looks at it. And the counterexample to this is the physically sensing of warmth or coolness. So an observer might sense that, or one person might sense that the room is warm, while someone else might sense that the same room is cool. So those observations depend on the observer, and so they're not considered empirical, but more subjective. So empirical evidence is not dependent on the observer and appears the same no matter who observes the evidence. Okay. No. Okay. So it may be easier just to think of evidence-based practices or strategies as data-informed decision making. And it takes a bit of strategizing and using assessment tools that have been validated to the needs of the individuals you're serving, as well as making sure that your treatment plans and interventions used are not just cookie cutter or a one size fits all, but that you're using these tools and treatment models that have been replicated over and over and over, getting the same positive results and the results that you want as your program outcomes. So one of the biggest issues we've seen in the field is not that programs aren't using assessments or validated tools, but that those results of those tools are just going into a case file. And the information isn't being used to personalize a treatment plan for your participants. So just, look at your processes, and it's not enough to do the assessment, but to actually use it for how you will serve your participants. Okay, so evidence-based, let's see, what works? Trying to get, there we go. I'm having to do both at the same time. So, like I said, if you want to take the sip of beverage game, do it every time I say recidivate or recidivism, and here we go. So when looking at all of our programs, the bottom line is that we want to reduce the rates of recidivism of our participants. And research analytically demonstrate that recidivism rates can be significantly reduced through theoretically sound, well-designed programs that appropriately apply the principles of effective intervention. And we have to move away from the standard of, well, we just know it's working, or we can see the participants are doing better, or the participants tell us it's working, those types of things. What works is not a single program or an intervention, but a full body of knowledge and meta-analysis that's based on over 30 years of research that's been conducted by numerous scholars across North America. And we also know that none of this is really impactful without human interaction, intervention, and trust with our participants. Okay, so we have the premise of R&R. So how many of you have heard of risk needs responsivity? Yay, thanks, Mindy. So this is the basic principles of effective intervention. The who, which is who we should be serving based on risk to recidivate. The what, which is what are the actual needs of the individual based on the assessment. And how will the individual respond to their case plan or services. And but there's also a how well, and I know that's not part of the R&R, but the how well is the project following and staying true to the model that they've implemented. And this seems to be the absolute hardest part for most programs because it requires constant check-ins, oversights, so that the provider or the intervention in the project aren't straying or drifting from the structured curriculum. And I realize I said R&R, but RNARF kind of doesn't have a good ring to it. So we'll just leave it as R&R. So we'll start with the risk principle. And we all know that high risk refers to those individuals with a higher probability of recidivating versus lower risk individuals who already display prosocial characteristics and have a lower chance of recidivating. So risk tells us who to target and who to serve. And there's two basic risk factors for criminal type behavior. One is static and one is dynamic. And static are those unchangeable risk factors like criminal history or biological factors such as IQ. And then there's the dynamic, which are those malleable risk factors like antisocial attitudes and substance use, which can change with your interventions. So dynamic risk factors provide the basis for developing a treatment plan, and they can address the factors that will reduce risk. Changing the dynamic factors, those malleable ones, changes the probability of recidivism. Some examples of higher risk traits or combinations of these that identify a higher risk individual is antisocial attitudes, values, and beliefs, where they minimize their criminal behavior and they don't take responsibilities for their actions. Antisocial peer associations, where they hang around with others and get into trouble. Lack of self-control or self-management, where they act very impulsively. They don't finish school. They may have a hard time keeping jobs. They might have substance use issues, or they just have an extensive history with the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system. Okay. So again, with the risk principle, we want to place, when placing lower risk individuals in programs that are actually designed for higher risk individuals, it disrupts their pro-social network and the very things that make them a low risk are interrupted, such as their school, jobs, family, which increases their failure rates. And I know most of your programs are dealing already with higher risk individuals due to the nature of CalVIP. So basically, we don't want to put lower risk individuals, into a high risk programs or interventions geared for high risk individuals, but we do want to make sure, it's not to say that they don't need some sort of intervention or be held accountable. It's just not in the same way as the high risk individual would. And when we talk about the higher risk individuals, we're talking about those that have the fewer protective factors in their lives, and those characteristics associated with lower likelihood of negative outcomes, and in this case, reduces the likelihood that an individual would recidivate. So I'm going to show you a slide here. This slide is oh, and that happened yesterday too. Sorry. This slide is ringing on the phone. Okay, so apologies. This whole working from home, school from home, you might see a kid pop in with a question from school, so apologize for that. So this slide is a graph from Ohio Halfway House and community-based correctional facility studies, and it shows the treatment effects for lower risk individuals that have been placed in intensive programs, and all the programs are displayed across the bottom axis. So in reading this chart, it's a bit counterintuitive, as the positive numbers show the reduction in recidivism while the negative numbers show an increase in recidivism. So still good on the top of the axis, on the zero line, and not so great on the bottom. So if you look at the red bar, that is low risk individuals in a program called KK. For this example, it increased their recidivism rate by 29% by putting the low risk individual into an intervention that was really designed for a higher risk. The black bar, which is all the programs aggregated together, looks at the average of all the programs with low risk individuals participating, and it still increases their recidivism by 4%. So as you can see, that programs actually made their participants worse with higher rates of recidivism. But the next slide is the same graphic, but with the more appropriate individuals put in more appropriate programs. So this is the same graph, but when program KK treats the higher risk individuals, a program with curriculum that's designed specifically for the population, the program actually decreased participants' recidivism by 32%, which is the green data column. So it's the same program, same curriculum, just with the right individuals in the right programs. And then the black bar, which shows the average of all the programs with higher risk individuals, now shows an average decrease in recidivism by 8%. And then the trend is really similar for moderate and moderate high risk individuals. Okay, so now we've got the need principle. And the need principle is effective interventions that target crime producing needs, or in other words, criminogenic factors. So programs that need to make sure that the vast majority of their interventions are focused on criminogenic factors. And there's another slide that will show you a little bit more about that. So there's a term that UCCI uses, and it's called correctional quackery, which is one of my favorite terms from them. But it refers to the use of treatment interventions that are based on neither existing knowledge that causes crime nor the existing knowledge of what programs have been shown to change the criminogenic behavior of an individual. So that's not to say that these types of programs can't be part of a holistic approach to the individual's recovery or their treatment plan. But when these types of programs like yoga or equine therapy, music circles, are used as the primary treatment, or at a higher ratio to something like COG or cognitive behavioral therapy, positive results and a reduction in recidivism tends to be low. So we realize that agencies and organizations' ability to provide specific programs can be limited by your resources or operational conditions, logistics and staffing. All of that goes into it. But it's important to remember that the programs offered will have a great consequence for the participants. So we want to look at those dynamic risk factors, those malleable factors that are also referred to as criminogenic needs and are considered to be the most appropriate targets for your intervention. And some of the most robust criminogenic risks include antisocial attitudes, values, beliefs, antisocial peer associations, substance use, lack of control, self-management skills, all those things we talked about just a minute ago. So this slide shows you the difference between criminogenic needs and non-criminogenic needs. But not all criminogenic needs on the left-hand side have equal influence on recidivism rates. So generally speaking, there are 7 criminogenic needs, and of those 7 that are on the left-hand side, the top 3 have the most significant impact on future recidivism and should be considered the primary intervention targets. So targeting pro-criminal attitudes, antisocial personality, and antisocial peer associations will basically give you more payoff for positive outcomes or more bang for your buck when you have limited resources. And there is a trickle down influence from the top 3 to the bottom 4, which are also important, but they should generally be considered the secondary targets for intervention unless one or more of those risk factors are associated as central to the behavior, like substance use. So, for example, a program offers vocational training to their participants as part of their overall program, but they can't seem to maintain employment because the participants say, my boss is a jerk, or, that just sucks. There's too many rules. And the reason why is because those top 3 criminogenic needs haven't been addressed. So your participant hasn't changed their attitudes, values, and beliefs from antisocial to pro-social. So the specific intervention strategy for an individual will, of course, depend on the combination of the needs that they present and the degree to which each is problematic, and then the person's unique circumstances. So attitudes that include antisocial values, beliefs, and emotional states, such as rage, anger, defiance, and taking on a criminal-like identity need to be addressed. Impulsivity, lack of empathy, lack of self-control. You've probably all seen these as part of your participants' makeup. And so those are the ones that you need to address first and foremost. So knowing that one's environment has a big impact on the success of the individual. So we need to make sure that the associations with their peers that have similar attitudes and beliefs will help by reducing their risk. So the same is true with targeting the needs of the family. It's important, their family or their support system. It's so important that to provide some either family-centric interventions or at a minimum education on the interventions and treatment for their family members, so that when the individual, the youth, goes back to their home or to their family situation or to their environment, the situation hasn't changed. So they need some sort of support for the work that they've already done using the same type of language, the same type of maybe um, the way they assess their situation and make better choices, uh, that when they've completed the program and they go back to that environment, they'll have a better rate of success. The last 2 on the left-hand side, the education, employment, and leisure time, have also been correlated to reducing recidivism. And by addressing how a participant spends their day, be it in school, a job, their free time after school. I heard some of the programs are having some afternoon virtual time. So by providing those pro-social activities along with a change in their attitudes, values, and beliefs towards those activities will decrease their rate to recidivate. And the non-criminogenic needs on the right-hand side can still be addressed, but the research has shown, and remember this is all based on research and meta-analysis, that the research has shown that the ratio for targeting non-criminogenic needs versus criminogenic needs are 4 to 1. So that's for every 1 need addressed on the right-hand side, there should be 4 needs addressed from the left-hand side. And research has shown, even though it's not on the left-hand side, that the best future predictor for recidivating is a person's prior history with the justice system. But remember, that was a static factor. So we don't have it on here because we're only talking about the things that we can change as part of our programs. Okay, so the next slide will show you a nice little graph. So this is targeting a higher number of crime-producing needs. So those that were on the left-hand side of that last slide increases the effects of programs on recidivism rates. So the programs that target 4 to 6 criminogenic needs over those non-criminogenic needs that are closer, so programs that are closer to that 4-to-1 ratio, reduced recidivism on average by 31%. And programs that targeted only 1 to 3 of those criminogenic needs, which were on the left-hand side versus those on the right-hand side of the non-criminogenic needs, were associated with only a slight increase with reducing recidivism. So as you know, your higher risk individuals don't have just one factor, they possess a full cluster of needs. And so many of these risk factors influence one another. So for example, substance use behavior typically puts the person in contact with other people who are antisocial in their orientation, so drug dealers or drug users. And a person with an antisocial personality who has temperament issues such as anger, poor self-regulation, and impulse control will also might have family conflicts. So it stands to reason that with the greater number of criminogenic needs addressed, the more likely it is that a person's risk to recidivate will decline. And if you like, and you're, Thanksgiving, you might have some time. I have about 200 articles of research that substantiate this. So just let me know. I can forward it to you, and you can, or it can put you to sleep if you have insomnia. So at this point, are there any questions?
Yes, I have a George Weaver
Hey, George.
saying that he thanks you for the presentation. And he says, as you stated, we have not yet been able to compile enough data in the literature to readily assess the impact of trauma. One of the things we have been able to do is correlate the causal relationship of trauma as it pertains to pro-criminal attitudes, antisocial personality, antisocial peer association, substance abuse, and familial issues. He selfishly plans to use the recording of this training to further train out staff. Would you mind expanding on this concept so we can help them further understand this?
So specifically to trauma, George? I know that the last time we talked to University of Cincinnati, they are doing, as you said, there's not a lot of research yet. We're hoping that that will eventually go to the left side where it actually is part of a criminogenic need, but there's just not a lot of data to support it. Like I said, the meta-analysis over and over again, looking at those programs that actually do look at trauma and use it as a primary need isn't just there yet. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I can, if you want to turn on your mic, maybe I can. No? Okay. So maybe George, you and I can connect afterwards, and I can better answer that question for you. Howie, was there any others?
I have a question.
Oh.
I'm using my mic if it's okay.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I've been familiar with these for some time, and we have utilized them in our programs in San Jose. But one of the elements that I'd like you to kind of speak to is most of this research was done with adults. And, most of our programs focus on youth. I mean, young adults as well, up to 24. But taking the lower groups, I find that they need to be augmented with developmental understanding and positive youth development perspectives, because we can grow a youth out of a situation a lot easier than an adult who's been,
absolutely,
embedded with trauma, which I put very high on the list because behavior, mind, thought, early childhood trauma will affect you as an adult. I just wanted to make that distinction because sometimes, when we've done the trainings around this and work with agencies, this information is really useful and people want to eat it up and apply it because it's going to be effective. But I think they need to keep in mind the developmental aspects of childhood.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'll
So-
be getting to that in a little bit with
Oh, great.
responsivity,
Okay.
my second R. But yes, that is a great point. And you know, with today's environment and so much of and especially with CalVIP, the violence, the trauma that goes into who they are, you know, really does need to be addressed. And I'm not trying to minimize that at all. Like I said, this is based on research and meta-analysis that's being done. And as George said, there's just not enough yet to positively move that trauma over to criminogenic, though they do recognize that it goes hand in hand, that you cannot, you know, positively affect youth change if you don't look at all their needs holistically, and trauma is one of those as part
Yeah.
of the responsivity. Yeah, you're
Yeah, I
absolutely
just know some individuals who say got hit over the head with a pistol, but and were stolen and were robbed, and they were already kind of marginal lifestyle, right? But
right.
that just made it worse. After that, you could hardly, they were just hyperactive all the time, and there's other elements that went into effect to kind of escalate elements.
Yep.
And until
Yeah,
they got over that trauma and really got impacted with it, they weren't able to change. It's just a point. That's all.
yeah. Oh no, thank you for that point. And yes, you guys are definitely doing a lot of hard work with these individuals who have had a lot go on in their young lives. And so, you know, I don't know if I congratulated you all on getting this grant, but also thanking you for the work that you do every day with the youth in your community. It's very heartfelt thanks from me. So, are there any other questions on risk and need?
One question that's
Sure.
kind of related. Is there any research regarding virtual programming now that I know it's still so new, but we are over 6 months in now?
Right.
I was
Not
just wondering if there's any guidelines to any sort of best practices regarding virtual programming.
right. Instead of those, you know, one-on-one or groups and things like
Mhm.
that. I have not heard of any, but that is an excellent question. I am going to reach out this afternoon to my contact at UCCI and ask if they have anything preliminary
Mhm.
that would talk about strategies that work a little bit better virtually, you know, when you can't, you know, I assume that when you have new referrals, that trust that you get by being in the same room is a little bit lost when you have that computer screen. What I have heard anecdotally is that the youth tend to be a lot more responsive because it's technological. They can fit everything into their schedules because they don't have to worry about any barriers like transportation or finding childcare if they're a young parent, or you know, job schedules. So I do know that, you know, that has shown at least some positive results in engaging and keeping youth in all different types of programs. So, but thank you for that. I will reach out to them.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Israel asks, are there any effective assessment tools that you recommend?
I do have a list. So it's not my list, but I do have a list from UCCI that I can give to Katrina, and she can follow up with you all about those different assessment tools that are specific for different needs. Because there isn't, like I said, there's not a cookie cutter one size fits all. So you might have to do a couple different assessments depending on, like, if it's solely criminogenic, if it has substance use, mental health issues. So you would put that trauma in with that. And I'll get that to her. But thank you. Yes, I do have that. I could talk for hours. You just don't really want to hear me talk for hours about all this. So anything else?
That's it from chat.
Okay, perfect. So let's go on to the second R, which is responsivity principle. And it can be basically divided into two components, general and specific. So the general responsivity principle states that the most effective interventions tend to be those based on cognitive, behavioral, and social learning theories. And listening to you guys over the last 2 days, I think I don't I don't even remember someone who's not doing some sort of cog in their program. So you guys are all on the right path. So specifically, those interventions that you're using should be behavioral strategies such as operant conditioning, as well as social learning techniques, modeling, role playing, shaping. You'll hear me say that several more times. Modeling, role playing, with your participants. And this cognitive restructuring should be integrated into every treatment component that your program has. The specific responsivity factor, on the other hand, um, shows the need for facilitators to match individuals to treatment and staff. And this is where that responsivity piece comes in that we were just talking about. So, and this is one of the harder parts for organizations who don't have tons of resources or have lots of different staff that you could be matching individuals to their to staff, but it's also matching them to treatment. So after you can carefully consider the key characteristics that someone has, like motivation to change, learning deficits, which we talked about just a minute ago, or severe anxiety, you want to match them to treatment that is going to be the most effective for them, but also matching them with staff. So you wouldn't put a really highly anxious person matched with a staff member who might be a little bit more confrontational or kind of in your face. And their participant might not respond well at all to group interventions if they're really anxious too. So that's kind of the responsibility and matching piece. So, excuse me, it's critical to match the interventions to the characteristics of your participants. And we all know that they have a wide variety of individual traits, such as cultural background, levels of motivation, learning style, intelligence level, mental health situations, gender, and all these things need to be considered when selecting the intervention that will most likely achieve their intended outcomes. So lots and lots to think about in matching. Program interventions that don't really address these traits can hinder successful outcomes. And the research demonstrates that this style of professional and matching the participant with the practitioner influences outcome. So, like I said before, I totally understand that all these responsivity factors may not be able to be addressed fully within your programs due to, not only resources but COVID um, and logistics, all those types of things. But at least acknowledging and potentially addressing some of those factors can increase your positive outcomes with your youth. And just know also, along with trauma, there's not a great deal of research that supports the specific responsivity principle, but they, do note that it does increase your positive outcomes with that. So, me. Okay, so the most effective behavioral and cognitive interventions are the ones that focus on factors that influence their behavior. They're action oriented, they reinforce pro social behavior in your youth. They include cognitive restructuring and a lot of times skill development with relatable examples. And your program should include approaches that I mentioned a little bit earlier that trains family members or a youth support system on appropriate techniques. It's so important for the success of the youth or the participants in your program that those closest to the individual, whether or not it's family, friends, teachers, pastors, those that will be in the person's immediate environment to help reinforce the ideals, the language, the pro-social values that they've learned in your program, and help kind of support their support system to carry on in their day-to-day lives once they've left your program. Okay, and one more responsivity slide. So we all know that the biggest thing that will help change is someone's motivation and willingness to change. And that's one of the biggest parts of the responsivity assessment. So Many programs have trained staff in things like motivational interviewing in an attempt to engage participants and assess the extent to which they're ready to make those change in their lifestyles. So some questions that need to be addressed include things like, does the individual have self-awareness that they have a problem that needs to be addressed? Are they in denial about that? Do they have perceptions regarding the fairness of the criminal system or the justice system, whether it's criminal or juvenile system, that it's unfair? How is the motivation for long-term change different from the motivation of them doing short-term changes? And again, if possible, motivation should be matched to the resources and counseling style. Looking at an individual's cognitive functioning or IQ level, as some participants that have IQ scores below 80 may have difficulty in completing programs that require reading or writing or thinking. Matching people to programs sometimes are overlooked as the participant might be withdrawn or shy or maybe even angry, when in fact they're missing some of those skills that are necessary in most of the programs. And then if you have employment and educational assignments, they also should consider reading levels and IQ. So gender, some questions to think about. Should we provide the same treatment to females as males or LGBTQ individuals? Are the same assessments and classification systems valid for everyone? And like we said before, this isn't a one-size-fits-all factor. As you know, there's separate and specific issues that need to be addressed with females or LGBTQ or mental health issues based on how the individual might identify. So this could include trauma services, medical services, trafficking services, sexual abuse services, those types of things. Race and ethnicity, several factors should be taken into consideration for treatment when the offenders identify with a specific race or ethnicity. I think you guys are all very aware of the cultural responsivity of your programs and the treatment, and it provides a greater success for reducing recidivism among the diverse populations that you serve. Additionally, there are studies that have documented that race and ethnicity is correlated with styles of communication. So again, responding to the participant and how they might respond or are impacted by the curriculum. Mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, paranoia, all these things play a significant role in their treatment plan and the success. And as we mentioned earlier, and you guys all stated, the trauma, it's important to realize that to be successful in the program that you have to look at those other issues prior to actual maybe treatment or treating simultaneously. So if you need direction on how to assess which factors should be considered as priorities, begin with looking at the last about 3 to 12 months of data and who did not complete your program or did not complete it successfully, and maybe analyze why they weren't successful. Maybe it might give you a direction on that responsivity factor, and it might be a good place to start. Before I get to the next slide, I've been told that we have a special guest, Katrina. Would you like to?
Yes, our executive director, Kathleen, has joined us. Kathleen, would you like to say a few words?
Just a very few words, starting with good morning, everybody. My name's Katie Howard. I'm the executive director of the BSCC, and I want to thank Helene and Katrina and Ricardo and the entire team for all that has gone into adopting an online orientation approach. We've done this with some of our other grants, and I'm understanding that it's going very, very well. And I'm just delighted to be able to spend a few minutes here. I'm going to stay on and listen for a while. Our CalVIP grant program is, congratulations to all of you. This is a wonderful program to be involved in. The work is so important and making meaningful change across the state in a whole lot of different approaches to address and reduce violence. So I'm very happy to see, I recognize some of the names on the call. I wish we were all in one room. I see Mandy, who was on a listening session last week. Nice to see you again. It's always wonderful to feel a part of a community that's working together on positive changes in programs. So I'm just here to listen for a while. Helene, back to you. Congratulations to all of you successful grantees, and let us know how we can help you to succeed in the programs that you're doing.
Thank you,
Great.
Kate.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, so we just have one more little thing about the responsivity principle before I open it up for questions on that. The chart that you have in front of you illustrates the point that I was just talking about with, the matching of participants to staff and interventions. So those programs that addressed behavioral and cognitive factors have a greater reduction in recidivism rates than addressing non-behavioral criminogenic factors. So as you can see on the right-hand side, those programs addressed behavioral issues, the responsivity principle of matching interventions to the different clusters of issues that a youth might have versus the non-behavioral. So they reduce the rate to recidivate by almost 30% by doing that. Okay. Are there any questions about the responsivity principle before I head to the last principle? No? Okay. So going forward, let me advance that. Okay, so the Fidelity Principle, the organization or agency that's providing the services should ensure that the intervention is delivered as designed and with the integrity to the model, which can include ensuring staff are modeling and role-playing the appropriate behavior, that they're qualified, well-trained, and supervised, that they're making sure that barriers are addressed, but services are targeting those criminogenic needs, those that were on the left-hand side of that prior slide, which will come up again. Making sure appropriate dosage and amount of treatment is provided. Sometimes, you don't quite provide enough treatment to get to that maximum success level. And then there's also a level where you could be doing hundreds and hundreds of hours of treatment, but their success, you're not going to get basically any more bang for your buck by just heavily giving them treatment after treatment after treatment. Monitoring the delivery of the program and activities. So part of the CPC is the administration of the program and the organization. Our leaders, part of those programming is, do they lead, it's kind of hard now, but to lead a group to sit in on those one-on-ones or those groups, just to make sure that the model is being followed with fidelity and there's not a lot of straying from the curriculum. And this is one of the bigger ones, is reassessing your participants throughout the program in meeting their targeted behaviors or determining whether or not they need any additional needs. Like I stated before, someone might seem like they're, shy, withdrawn, and angry, and you're assessing them for that. But really, once they start opening up, they have a substance use issue that really needs to be addressed in tandem, and they're just self-medicating. And so addressing those either simultaneously or reassessing and then putting into their case plan that now they need this intervention. Continually tracking the recidivism rates of participants. And then another big thing that was talked about yesterday by Elise is if you have an evaluator working with the program. So if an evaluator is on your program, they can take an unbiased look at the data to determine how well the program is working, if it's working as intended, and whether or not you need to make any small changes to be able to get back to the fidelity of the model that you're using. So it's not just a matter of cherry picking a research-based program or an off-the-shelf program. It's important that the leaders of the organization or the program ensure that the program is being monitored and measured to provide additional information, additional data needed for program change and effective implementation. So the next slide, this one, will show the Fidelity Principle. And we were talking a little bit earlier that a lot of this data was based on adults, but it also does have a lot of research behind it in the juvenile arena, as this shows the functional family therapy and aggression replacement training as part of the data. So the blue columns show the reduction in recidivism that can be achieved when a program is delivered with competency and fidelity to the model that they chose. And the red data columns show that even when you're using an EBP or a promising practice program, that failure to completely deliver the program and the curriculum as intended can result in an increase in recidivism. So for example, on the left-hand side, the FFT programs that competently and with fidelity delivered the FFT model reduced recidivism by 38%. And those programs that still used FFT but didn't deliver it competently or to the model of the curriculum actually increased recidivism by almost 17%. And then the same is true on the right-hand side with ART, the programs that delivered it competently versus incompetently as delivered. So increasing or reducing the rates to recidivate by 24% versus actually doing some harm by increasing the rate to recidivate by 10%. Okay. So here we're looking at the whole theory of R&R. So like the Fidelity Principle, adherence to the full R&R model can impact recidivism rates. So failure to adhere to the R&R can increase recidivism rates. So these effects or impacts are on the left-hand side if only risk is adhered to, and you only looked at the risk principle, recidivism is reduced by 10%. But if risk is not adhered to, it only your rate of recidivism is only 3%. If you only look at need, recidivism is reduced by 19%, but if need is not adhered to as part of the R&R model, then recidivism rates actually increase by 1%. And then on the right-hand side, if only responsivity is adhered to, recidivism is reduced by 23%. But if it's not, then it actually only increases their reduction of recidivating by 4%. And the next slide, the adherence to the model. So this is effects when the programs adhere to only pieces of the R&R principles. So if none of the principles are utilized, there's an increase in recidivism by 2%. If only one of those principles, either R and or R, only one of those is adhered to, then there is a 2% decrease in recidivism. If two of those letters, the principles, are adhered to, then there's an 18% decrease in recidivism. But if all three are incorporated into your program as principles, there is a 26% decrease in recidivism. So before we get into the next little piece, are there any questions? No? Okay. So over the last couple days, it sounds like a lot of the interventions that are being used are CBT based or cognitive behavioral therapy based. So a lot of this information probably is not new to you, but again, maybe it will validate the great work that you're doing and that you're going to be implementing in your programs if you're using these CBT models. So as you know, the core concept behind CBT is that thinking changes behavior, and that without targeting that thought and belief system of the individual that goes into their behavior, we're not as likely to change that behavior. So if you think of a picture of an iceberg, what's above the waterline is their behavior. But the bulk of the iceberg is right below the surface, and this is where our thoughts, feelings, and belief systems lie. So while you can't readily see those thoughts of the individual and the choices that go into their behaviors, it is what drives those choices. So we have to get below the surface into what's happening in their head to actually change behavior. So The most effective form of programming for most moderate and higher risk individuals is cognitive behavioral. And those programs address antisocial thinking patterns. They build problem solving skills and apply behavioral techniques that equip the participant with new thinking and new skills. And as I said before, through repetition and repetition and repetition, as well as role playing and modeling the behavior and increase the difficult level of those practice scenarios, you will get better outcomes when that individual is actually back in the community. So case management plan should indicate the criminogenic needs being addressed and the interventions and services selected to specifically address them. So the two core components of CBT is cognitive restructuring and cognitive behavioral coping skills. And the cognitive restructuring is when you not only identify cognitive distortions or excuse me, thinking errors, but also provide a replacement for problematic thoughts and those which are more likely to lead to healthier and pro-social behaviors. So when a person has an abundance of the antisocial thoughts, it's important to identify the ways to help replace those thoughts with more pro-social alternatives. Cognitive behavioral coping skills are more geared towards teaching individuals the alternative approaches to managing difficult situations. So these approaches can be used when there seems to be a lack of adaptive thinking or the ability to problem solve and make good decisions. And this is where we can teach participants improved social and coping skills. Okay, so over the past couple decades, numerous literature reviews and meta-analysis have been conducted to examine the effectiveness of various justice interventions. And in spite of differences in the samples and statistical techniques, the conclusions from the authors are very similar, that programs that reduce recidivism possess several common characteristics. And this is basically the list of characteristics that have been identified. So again, having some sort of educational or training component for family members as part of your program will help decrease the likelihood of individuals recidivating. Constant reinforcements and those familiar program buzzwords can help the individual with appropriate problem solving in difficult scenarios or making good decisions when faced with those hard choices in real world situations. So, slide says it all. Programs that use cognitive behavioral interventions should use them throughout the entire program, not just pieces. So, the strategies that have been found most important in implementing CBT, I mentioned the cognitive restructuring, where you identify the cognitive distortions and thinking errors and provide a replacement for those thoughts. Social skills training focus on practicing pragmatic skills of living. Combining this with cognitive behavioral therapy will help individuals focus on changing how they think about social situations as well as how to behave. And you've got problem solving, which is working through practical ways to solve problems in advance through a step-by-step process. And emotional regulation with helping them to learn to adjust their emotional reactions to match the appropriateness of the situation. And as I said before, you're going to hear me say it again, modeling and role playing are crucial to behavioral change. So I'm going to bring up that slide again with the criminogenic targets versus the non-criminogenic. So it reminds us that we should focus on those 7 needs that are on the left. And again, to be effective, the decisions about which treatment targets to use must also be driven by the results of a person's needs assessment. Also, as a reminder, there should be a 4-to-1 ratio of criminogenic versus non-criminogenic needs to be targeted for your most successful outcomes for your participants. But as a reminder, if your program targets 3 or less needs, all of those should be on the criminogenic side, on this criminogenic column. Okay, last but not least, I can get it to go forward. A big component in effective programming is behavioral modification systems. The use of rewards and punishers to encourage new skills and pro-social behavior, or to extinguish antisocial behavior and promote behavioral change, is probably nothing new to you guys. But the goal of a good behavior modification system is to develop a mechanism that increases compliance while the individual is involved in programming, but more importantly, to help them increase the long-term pro-social behavior and success. So your system for behavior modification can include things like are on the screen. So it doesn't even have to cost a lot. So you guys know praise and feedback, immediate feedback goes a long way to increasing the self-esteem of your individuals in your programs. There's indirect praise, group recognition. In some instances, there's more frequent or less frequent meetings with staff. If we were pre-COVID, they could help act as a mentor to one of the newer participants. Badges, ribbons, and certificates, gift cards, a job in a special setting. I know one of the funniest things, my little one loves stickers, but it's amazing how much that seeing, again, pre-COVID, a sticker chart on a wall of where you have individuals come in to see their name with a star next to it or a ribbon next to it goes a long way of increasing their confidence. So with that, I want to thank you for indulging me in the last hour on principles of effective intervention. And any questions? Someone wants food? Is that what the chat room is?
I think that they were saying that you could use food as an incentive to get.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Pizza, long way. Yeah. If you feed them, they will come.
Yes, especially the young ones.
Yes. Okay. If there's no questions, Katrina can always take questions, and I don't know as if my email, I should have put my email up there, but it's very easy to get a hold of me, but you can always go through Katrina and I can answer any questions that you want. I saw a couple people really do want 200 pages to read, so I appreciate that. I will send those out to you. But if not, thank you again and congratulations on your grant. And I look forward to hearing about all the great successes over the next 3 years.
Helene, there was an additional person that does want that 200 pages data.
Okay.
So we'll get together after the meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so it is my turn. So here we are. In this section, we'll go over the grantee's program responsibilities, which covers the lead agency responsibilities, progress reports, site visits, project director's calls, technical assistance, and modifications. As the lead agency, you are responsible to ensure that the team is familiar with the project, which includes the project goals and timelines, key activities, roles, and responsibilities. If you are subcontracting CalVIP dollars to an outside agency, our expectation is that you monitor their work. It is important that you have a quality assurance monitoring process in place. That might mean regular site visits, team meetings, observations, progress reports, or all of the above. As a director grantee, you are required to provide BSCC with supporting documentation for all expenditures. Therefore, you should be requiring the same of your subcontractors. You don't want to get halfway through the grant cycle and realize you cannot claim an expenditure because the subcontractor does not have the supporting documents or was claiming an unclaimable expense. It is also your responsibility to ensure the lines of communication remain open, not only with BSCC, but also with your subcontractors. Communication plays a large role in ensuring a successful program. Quarterly progress reports are just one way grantees communicate with BSCC and relay vital information. Progress reports document the project's progress towards meeting goals and objectives, provide a mechanism to identify issues and the need for technical assistance. As the lead agency, you will compile all the information from your sub-grantees and include it within your progress report. The information that is provided in your progress reports are also used by your field representative when preparing for site visits. There are a few different types of site visits. First is the initial, which builds relationships with the project staff, stakeholders, partners, and provides a high-level evaluation of the project's infrastructure to include financial data, referrals, subcontracting, and hiring. Comprehensive site monitoring visits are generally an on-site visit. However, depending on the current pandemic, it might be via Zoom. Hopefully, life will get back to quote unquote normal before cohort 3 grantees are scheduled for a CMV, but only time will tell on that one. The CMV includes an assessment of the administrative, fiscal, and programmatic components of the project. In preparation for the visit, I will send out the CMV tool for you to fill out and return to me at least 1 week prior to the visit. A draft of the CMV tool is included in your virtual binder for your review. Projects are monitored for compliance with applicable laws, regulations, policies, and program requirements. Acceptance of the grant agreement obligates the project to allow BSCC staff to access all project books, documents, papers, and records for inspection, copying, monitoring, and auditing. More information regarding site visits can be found in the amazing grant admin guide, and it starts on page 61. BSCC also conducts project directors calls quarterly, which give grantees and BSCC another opportunity to communicate. Our first meeting will be sometime after the first of the year. I will provide you all with a schedule within the next few weeks. It is expected that all project directors attend the call. However, you may invite other program staff to attend as well. BSCC staff will provide programmatic and fiscal updates, and grantees will be given the opportunity to present their accomplishments, upcoming events, and challenges that you have faced within that quarter. The project director's calls also provide grantees an opportunity to request and discuss technical assistance, not only with BSCC, but also with fellow grantees. Chances are, if you are experiencing challenges, other grantees may be having the same challenge. So remember that you can request technical assistance anytime that you do have it, but the project director's call is a great way to discuss it with everybody. We want you to be successful, so we are here to provide assistance whenever you need it. If you have any questions, please always remember to check with the grant admin guide, and which has most of the answers. However, if you have technical assistance, you can also contact myself, Angela, or Stephanie, and we'd be happy to assist you. The last item we'll cover in this short section is modifications. Stephanie talked a little bit about budget modifications. In her presentation, they are expected, and it is an adjustment to your budget in order to accomplish your project goals. A budget modification modifies the budget narrative details within your budget line item or category, modifies line item dollar amounts by moving funds from one line item or budget category to another, but it does not change the total grant award. A budget modification requires prior approval from your field rep, which is me. Once you have received prior approval, you will be able to fill out your budget modification located in your invoice workbook. Program modifications are very different than budget modifications. A program modification is viewed as a change in scope of the project. Program modifications are not permissible, not permissible for statutory requirements, program objectives. They must be discussed with your field rep prior to submission and required a detailed narrative to explain why the change is necessary and what the outcome will be if the modification is not approved. They must be submitted by your project director, must show that the need to modify arose out of circumstances beyond the project's control, and must be approved by BSCC in writing before implementation. Program modifications are rarely done with competitive grants, as you cannot veer too far from what you were funded to do. But if you have any questions, you can always contact me outside of the grantee orientation. My section was very short and sweet to wrap up. So are there any questions regarding program responsibilities? All right. So we've come to that time again to go over grantee presentations. So we'll start with.
I'm sorry, could I make one question?
Absolutely.
I think I know the answer, but I want to verify it. This is a 3-year grant. We're in the middle of COVID. A lot of direct service programs are going to be hindered in their frequency and number of youth, et cetera, they can work with just because of social distancing and all that. I know in our area, there's we're purple now, you know, so that's the highest level. So if you see this as a 3-year grant, that means we can make adjustments in this. As long as we don't change the scope of the service, the type of service, we can make adjustments in numbers as we're going. We could catch up. I guess I'm getting at, like, in the first year, if we don't serve as many as we could because of the restrictions around COVID, that we might be able to make it up in the second year, and that would be acceptable.
Correct. That would be more towards like a budget modification. So if you have monies that you were expecting to expend, like travel, I know a lot of you put money aside to travel to Sacramento for the grantee orientation. You obviously did not utilize that funding, so you can do a budget modification and move funding from one line item to the other.
Or even staffing, we might not need as many staff the first year or something. Okay.
Right.
Okay, just want to confirm that.
Perfect. Are there any other questions before I call on the City of Gustine?
Audria asked, how do they access the recordings for day 1, day 3 of the grantee orientation?
IT will put them on the CalVIP website. I have already requested, so as soon as we're done today, they will upload them. I'm not exactly sure what day it will get done, so just where you see the virtual binder and the grantee orientation information within the cohort 3 tab, they'll be located there.
Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Good morning, fellow grantees. Exciting. I was actually very impressed with some of the projects over the last couple days. You know, I thought about what everybody's doing, and we actually took a little piece of many of the projects I heard yesterday and the day before. The only thing we don't have is a surgeon. I think LA had a surgeon. It'd be great to have a surgeon on our team. But anyways, our project is called Mental Health and Programming in Schools. And it stands, basically we call it MAPS. And so I want to introduce our team. First, we have Doug Dunford, who is our city manager. And Doug gets it. He was actually the police chief here for many years and now is our leader here in Gustine. We also have Jazz Bering. She's our financial manager. We have Brian Ballinger, who is our superintendent for our school district. And we have Sam Joseph, who's actually going to be running the program here. He's sitting here behind me in the office. So we're really excited about this. And I just want to give a shout out to Helene. That was an awesome presentation. All the tenets you talked about, all the things you mentioned are things that we subscribe to. And it kind of brought me back to my my college days. I thought I was at the San Jose State University studying criminal justice again. So I'm glad there was no test, but that's good stuff. So thank you. Our city, Gustine, is a very small community in the Central Valley, like many other cities that were awarded grants. We're about 15,000 people, mostly a lot of Spanish-speaking population, a very large Portuguese community. We were originally founded as a dairy location, also a lot of ag. The things that that kind of brought us to where we're at today is a lot of our youth are twice as likely to be victimized as those in other states. Also, we have a very low education, higher education rate. Our youth are twice as likely to be victimized, but also the unemployment is very high. And so putting it all together with our school, we put a very robust team together. And this grant involves our schools, our police department, mental health, nonprofit groups, probation. Many people come in and basically embedding themselves in the school and providing our youth everything they need to be successful. You know, I don't need to explain that, you know, a lot of the youth, especially at the elementary age groups, as well as those in high school, are faced with many challenges, especially when they get to middle school, whether it's gangs, drugs, stress, self-esteem, anxiety, depression. Those are the times that we want our team to invest themselves in the lives of these youth. And so what we're doing is we're going to ensure that we provide intensive support services to the families of the youth. We're going to, our goals, ultimate goals are to reduce the suspension rate by 20%, reduce truancy by 20%, increase graduation rates, provide over 2,500 presentations to the parents and the faculty of the schools on various topics, as I mentioned. Also to reduce about 25% of our youth involved in the justice system. And part of that is providing intensive services to at least 300 of the youth that we're going to be working with, as well as diverting about 75 youth from the justice system by providing intensive services to those youth. And many of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to have our officers in kind of like paired up with the mental health clinician, going into the classrooms, putting on presentations, identifying those youth that we can help, that we can provide extra services to, and basically provide those services. We're going to be starting up in investing in Explore Post, diverting high school aged youth into the police department. And this is something I think is going to really benefit not only their lives and being part of the police department, being part of an organization, but hopefully give them structure for later on, you know, in the end, that we want all of them to be successful adults in our community. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Fresh Lifelines for Youth, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cassidy Higgins. I'm the Vice President of Community Impact at Fresh Lifelines for Youth, or otherwise known as FLY. We're really grateful to be a part of such great work happening, and this is actually our second round of funding. And so we're particularly excited because this really helps us launch and build on some of the work that we started in the last round. Some of the folks who are going to be working on this project include Natalia Perfetto. She is our Director of Finance and Operations. And then we also have Rachel Vosters, who is our Manager of Evaluation and Learning, supporting our data collection and evaluation work. We are being funded for 2 cities in this project, Oakland and San Jose, and we have 2 of our program models that are being supported. One of those models is our law program, where we teach a law-related education curriculum for 12 weeks. We teach it in the community, in schools, and in juvenile facilities. And in those 12 weeks, young people get to learn about the law and also their rights within that law. And then we also slide in some sneaky social emotional learning skill building. So really aiming to build up self-awareness, social awareness, critical thinking, and self-advocacy, with the overarching goal of really building agency, helping young folks find their agency and voice within their communities. And then the other program that we have funded through this project is our CAFA program, which stands for Court Appointed Friend and Advocate. And it's a mentor program where we match young people who are on probation with positive adult role models from their communities. And these mentors support young people to work toward the goals that they want to achieve, while also providing court advocacy in the courtroom to really support them in getting off of probation. And so, like I said, we're really grateful to be here and excited to launch into the second phase of the work for this project.
Thank you so much. The City of Bakersfield, it's your turn.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brent Stratton. I'm the Assistant Chief of Police, and I'd like to start with introducing our team, which is Mr. Stuart Wakeling, who's the Director of the California Partnership for Safe Communities, who's kind of helping us walk through this process. I'm new to this process, and so it's been really great for me to get to sit in and listen for the last couple of days and learn, and we're really excited about starting this program. So we would like to extend our thanks to BSCC and CalVIP for this. I'd like to introduce our business manager who's on the call, Darren Branson, who's helping us through the logistics on the finance side. Our day-to-day contact is Dan McAfee, who is our lieutenant in our special enforcement unit. And we have an analyst, Elizabeth Agerton, who's helping with us as we gather some of the data as we kind of chart this new course. So as I mentioned, it's been really inspiring listening to a lot of the stories over the last couple of days. And I would like to, again, offer a big thanks to the city of Stockton. We got a chance to go up there and see how Stockton started their program within their police department, as well as developing the relationships within their community, and was absolutely nothing short of impressed by Daniel Muhammad, who I believe is on this call, and the work that he's doing there. And we're looking to create something very similar with some of our own dynamics here. We have some of the baseline stuff in place, but this is really helping us formalize it and move it into a better direction. So we're really excited about what that could look like, and kind of have a 4-part process. And the first part is building a partnership focused project support and management team. And then we're going to move working with our stakeholders to build a comprehensive and detailed kind of a shared understanding of the problem, with the opportunity to help solve the problem with some of our community partners as well. Whereas traditionally, I don't think law enforcement, at least in our city, has really gone that route. So this is kind of a little bit of a change in our dynamics. We're really excited about it. So the component of having the violence intervention program will also be the development of this department through the city of Bakersfield that's separate with the police department, but works hand in hand. So we're really excited about what some of those dynamics will look like for us. And we're knocking on the door of breaking our homicide record this year. And so we're really thinking that this is just the perfect time for implementation. We're looking forward to it. So again, very new to a lot of things you're talking about, kind of information overload for sure, but really excited about the process and walking through it.
Thank you so much. Los Angeles Brotherhood Crusade. Is anybody here from Brotherhood Crusade?
I was just talking and had only turned on my video. My apologies. Good morning, everyone. Brotherhood Crusade has been in the community for 52 years, providing services and supports to the South Los Angeles community. My name is Shakoya Green. I am the Senior Vice President of Programs. We have George Weaver, who is our Social Emotional Learning, Trauma-Informed Youth and Child Development Specialist. Alondra Jackson, who is our Controller. Nason Buchanan, who is our Vice President of Boys and Young Men of Color. Leatrice Moore, who is the Director of Gang Reduction Youth Development Program. Damon Johnson, who is our Director of Boys and Young Men of Color. And then we have Dr. Williamson, who is with Amada Psychology Institute, who is one of our partners. Sean Shepard from Game Changers. AC Green from the AC Green Youth Foundation. First, I want to say thank you very much. We at the Brotherhood Crusade are honored and humbled and thrilled to be a recipient of the CalVIP grant again. And we are thrilled to have the opportunity to provide the young people and the community with the opportunity to thrive and resolve and address violence in the community. Our program is the Proud to Be Me Trauma-Informed Youth Gang Violence Prevention Program. And what we know is in South LA is that gang violence and homicide contribute to more than 60% of the violence in our community. when we developed our curriculum, we asked ourselves if the traditional methods were effective. And after doing research, research shows that it was not effective. We wanted to make sure that we were true to the intent and that we were effective. And so we created a human-centered design that includes a cognitive behavioral approach. And we look to change the mindset of our youth, which includes their attitudes, behaviors, and belief. We also wanted to make sure that we address the unaddressed trauma of the youth, which includes antisocial behaviors, social issues, family issues, delinquent peer association, and criminalistic behaviors. We understand that youth vote with their feet, and we have to be culturally responsive when connecting with the youth. And what we also understand is that this does not mean dressing like them, listening to the same music that they listen to, and talking like them. We have to be able to really resonate with the youth and really motivate and inspire them to have a change, to change their mindset. We also look to address the underlying issues of why a young person joins gangs and provide resources and supports. We have partnered with the Amada Psychology Institute, who will provide youth with services and will provide training to staff to assist with vicarious trauma. We have also partnered with Game Changers, where youth will have real, meaningful, honest discussion with law enforcement about how they feel about law enforcement and develop solutions. We look to empower our youth to become change agents in their community. We have demonstrated proof of concept over the last 10 years with our Proud to Be Me curriculum, and CalVIP allows us to expand with fidelity and not water down our program. This project will serve 300 high-risk youth between the ages of 10 and 24 in Compton, Linwood, Inglewood, South Los Angeles, and Pomona. And it will also allow us to satisfy ongoing expansion requests from LA County Probation, LAUSD, the County Office of Education, and the County Chief Executive Office. Our Proud to Be Me program is an effective trauma-informed 2-year, 894-hour during school and out of school impact violence prevention, mentoring, and workforce development model. And it has 7 distinctive phases: relationship, trust and rapport building, cultural rites of passage, and mindset change, self-actualization, agency and aspiration, skill development, mainstreaming, practicum, and follow-up. And if anyone from the team would like to chime in, please feel free to do so. If not, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The City of Los Angeles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Barba, and I am a newly appointed Grants and Trainings Coordinator here at the Gang Reduction Youth Development Office. So for the Mayor's vision and the GRID Office vision, we want to create communities that are healthy, peaceful, thriving environments for residents, while also recognizing how gang violence is a symptom of historical and societal injustices. So with that in mind, the GRID office has a comprehensive strategy that includes community engagement, prevention, intervention, and violence interruption. So the CalVIP grant will help us focus on 6 particular grid zones with the prevention and intervention. We are focusing on these 6 grid zones because we notice an uptick in violence, and these funds will help us further support these areas. So to be a little bit more specific, the first thing that the funds will go to would be our community-based contractors in those 6 areas, which we have already identified, to help them with necessary violence and reduction strategies, peacemaking efforts, and these peacemaking efforts include incident response, rumor control, peace maintenance, and just monitoring hotspots. Another way that these funds are going to help support us is supporting our agencies with additional training. So training community liaisons and our community intervention workers through our Los Angeles violence intervention training. And this training really helps ensure that our intervention teams build trust with residents and gang members in their prospective grid zones by using their own lived experiences and knowledge with those areas and residents. And then the third is to help continue support our grid prevention and intervention model, which includes behavioral therapy, case management, family counseling, and definitely much more. And then the fourth is obviously we have come in these very interesting times with COVID, and these funds are also going to help support that additional load that these particular 6 zones have seen. So not only are they dealing with all these responsibilities with trying to keep our community safe and connecting with their clients, but also the extra load of having to respond to COVID. So these funds will help us in that way. Also, just keeping in mind that we really want to be focused on our 3 central approaches, that being building the resiliency of the grid communities by slowing the increase of violent crime rates, and by, like I said, trainings and crucial services that may have changed because of COVID, and trying to troubleshoot those things, especially when a lot of our work comes with connecting and being in the communities. So what happens when that is taken away, when we can't be face to face? So making sure that our teams are supported in that way. And then, yeah, so I think that kind of covers everything. But yeah, so these funds will directly support our prevention interventions in 6 particular grid zones, and continue the work that we're already doing here at the grid office. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sierra Health Foundation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kendra Montgomery Block with the Sierra Health Foundation. I'm Associate Director of Community and Economic Justice. I'm super proud to be able to have this second iteration of our CalVIP grant that really works to expand our partnership. Let's just pull up. Just a program overview, the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, the City of Sacramento, and a consortium of evidence-based violence prevention community-based organizations have been awarded this next iteration of our CalVIP grant successfully. This new expansion of what we call our Black Child Legacy Healing the Hood campaign really works to eliminate community youth-led violence throughout the city and county of Sacramento. The purpose of our program is to make sure that we're providing comprehensive community violence interruption, intervention, prevention, and power building to African American youth and families living in the most vulnerable neighborhoods in Sacramento. Our ultimate goal is to reduce youth gun violence, and we're doing that through, again, prevention, intervention, and interruption services, focusing on about 105 youth over the next 3 years, ages 10 to 22. Some of our main objectives, again, is to increase services around violence intervention and prevention, increase career and workforce pathways, make sure that we have an improved reentry and transitional services, and then to improve diversion and social justice youth development supports and opportunities throughout our community. We're really fortunate to be able to really use the very public campaign of the Black Child Legacy campaign to provide wraparound services and resources in 7 vulnerable neighborhoods throughout Sacramento County. And those services and resources include the following: wraparound family services for the whole family, community and case management, mentoring and fellowship, education and life skills planning, employment and job training and placement, legal services. We do have law enforcement relationships, mental health, substance abuse, and trauma-informed focused ACEs healing, victim services and proactive peace events, as well as, again, community engagement. We pride ourselves on our coordinated community response around gun violence crisis protocol that we've built over the past couple of years with our previous CalVIP grant. And now really our work around COVID-19 and pivoting most of our community intervention workers to also be COVID-19 community outreach workers. And that includes the health, the safety, the vitality of our neighborhoods, resources and services, again, to those vulnerable residents that COVID-19 has provided just and exacerbated. We have a host of wonderful agencies and partners that are helping along this work. And I think what really speaks to the power of our partnership is all of the partners that also received CalVIP grants here in the city and county of Sacramento that have already spoke before I got to. So part of our partnership is working with Advance Peace, the city of Sacramento, who also received the CalVIP grant, our hospital services and model that's really led by the UC Davis Center, who also received a CalVIP grant. We have community-led incubators that are on here when it comes to Mutual Assistance Network, as well as the Building Healthy Communities team. We have a North and a South hub. And then our technical assistance leadership really is provided by Innovation and Urban Peace Institute. We're excited about this work, the opportunity to continue to build that. You know, pre-COVID, we were in the city of Sacramento 30 months without a juvenile homicide. We really attribute that to the brave partnerships that we continue to forge ahead. And again, I think that really is leveraged by all of our main core partners also receiving a CalVIP grant because we speak the same language. We have the want and need the same outcomes. And we've been building that, and we're happy to lean into COVID and to continue to have those really great outcomes for our community. I would open the floor to any of my other teammates. We're also a proud grantee of the Obama Foundation and the My Brother's Keeper initiative, as well as one of your diversion grants. And we're looking forward to leveraging what we can and continue to build upon our very successful partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Southern California Crossroads. Is there anybody representing Southern California Crossroads?
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is Paul Carrillo. I'm the executive director of Southern California Crossroads. I see a lot of familiar faces of partners that usually attend the annual conference, so hopefully we can be back next year. Crossroads has provided violence prevention and intervention services in South LA for about 20 years. Our services are based out of the community, parks, schools, hospitals. Some of the cities that we serve are Compton, Watts, Willowbrook, Linwood, Southgate, Cudahy. It's a combination of LA City and LA County. I believe on the call is Joe Gallardo, our director, and Ramona Khan, our accounting manager. We also are out of 2 trauma centers and 1 national rehab center, engaging victims of crime while they're admitted into the hospital. These funds will be used to support the coordination of our hospital-based and street outreach violence intervention services. The goal is to prevent people from being shot or victimized in the first place. And if somebody is victimized and meets the criteria of our program, then our goal is to engage them during that teachable moment while they're admitted, and also engage their families and obtain consent, enroll them in the program, and hopefully prevent them from further victimization. Our target population is about 12 years old and up. St. Francis Medical Center is not a pediatric trauma center, so we don't get very many victims that are under the age of 18. But out of the middle schools that we work in Linwood, students are as young as 12. We do have an assessment tool that we're very proud of that we created with USC, University of Southern California. It's for secondary school students, middle school and high school. One of the key areas for us, which I haven't seen very many assessment tools that have social media questions in regards to their behavior on social media, exposure to different things on social media. So that's proven to be very effective for us in identifying risk factors of our clients And we're also in the process of finalizing an assessment tool that we'll use on trauma patients when they arrive in the hospital as a victim of a crime, of a violent crime. So thank you for the opportunity. That's us and who we are and what we offer, and glad to be a part of this funded group. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The City of San Jose.
Good morning.
Morning.
Katrina, thank you so much for this opportunity and for again bringing San Jose back into the once before CalGRIP and now CalVIP family. I also want to thank all these troopers I see across this state, you know, from Paul Carrillo to Jose in Salinas and Khalid and just so many of our partners. And if I didn't mention your name, Anna, and I could go on forever because we're a tight-knit community, and it's just good to see all that power out there fighting this great fight. All that being said, my name is Mario Maciel, and I have the honor, privilege, and extreme challenge of trying to coordinate elements of our city's youth violence initiative in the city of San Jose, which is a city of over 1 million residents and quite the melting pot of cultures and ethnicities, et cetera. With me today, I have CJ Ryan, our Chief Fiscal Officer. I have Israel Kanhura, who's our day-to-day supervisor and superintendent. Jeff Siegel, our day-to-day analyst for the Mayor's Gang Task Force. Ron Soto, my former boss and now colleague and internal consultant. And lastly, Christian Geckler, I believe, is with us from Social Policies and Research, our external evaluators. That makes up our team trying to take on this great opportunity, Katrina. In the city of San Jose, what we're funding is an expansion of our Trauma to Triumph hospital-based intervention. Having heard Paul Carrillo just before me, having heard JT out there in East Los Angeles, Vincent in Los Angeles, Christy Adams in UC Davis, we obviously do very similar work. I don't want to take too much time, Katrina, because I'm basically repeating what those great programs do. But in a nutshell, this expansion is going to allow us not to be at the mercy of the helicopter ride. We have 2 level 1 trauma units in San Jose. Unfortunately, we only have current funding for our Valley Medical Center, our county hospital, but we have a level 1 unit on the east side of San Jose where much of our violence takes place. And if an individual is flown there, they don't get this service. And thanks to the BSCC and CalVIP, we'll now be able to expand to both level 1 hospitals in our city. The premise being, like you all have heard, is to identify these individuals and take advantage of that golden opportunity or that silver opportunity. You know, even the hardest caliber individual becomes a bit more amenable to services and open to the potentials of changing their lives once perforated by steel or a bullet. And so those epiphanies we're going to take advantage of and maximize that opportunity. Yeah, we call it in the evidence-based world case managing and addressing their criminogenic needs, but the bottom line is we need to insulate these individuals and love them up. So we'll call it case management for Helene and for all of you and address criminogenic needs, but we're loving them up and insulating them with the resources they need never to visit these hospitals again. Our age parameters are 13 to 30 years of age. And again, beyond the case management, it's connecting them to all those resources and wraparound services that'll make them successful. I know it's been a long 3 days, so I'll let it rest there. You know, the city of San Jose has a comprehensive model, and if there's anything we can do to share or help the learning curve with any startup city, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Mario.
Welcome.
Youth Alive.
Good afternoon or good morning, folks. Wow, getting ahead of myself. First, I want to thank definitely BSCC for being a recipient of the CalVIP grant. I want to congratulate, obviously, everybody else that's on here receiving this. And kind of like as Mario said, I also put out the olive branch of collaboration, and anything we can do to help others, we would be glad to do so. And I can't go on without giving thanks to Johnny Torres down there in Saya at Saya for the shout out earlier. So I am John Torres up here in Youth Alive up in Oakland, California. And joining me on the call today is our financial officer, Sue Dene, and Kendra Simmons, our intervention director, who serves as our day-to-day program contact. Our project name is From Incident to Intervention. And so with this CalVIP grant, Youth Alive will be strengthening our comprehensive violence reduction strategy, which is a collaboration of our in-house programs, responding to 3 of the most impactful experiences related to violence in the community: shootings, homicides, and incarceration. So our strategy aims to break the cycles of violence, incarceration, and victimization that surface from these traumas. These strategies represent a homegrown integrated network of effective programs. And these approaches obviously aim to also intervene with the most at risk of either being a victim or perpetrator of gun violence. We utilize the following approaches: hospital-based violence intervention, intensive case management, homicide response and support, violence interruption adapted from our partners at Cure Violence, our ambassador program, which incorporates a lot of the advanced peace fellowship model practices, police and community trust building, and mental health services. And so these strategies were selected because they're a mixture, we feel they're a mixture of short, medium, and longer term interventions, and because in some cases they were developed and have been delivered by and for Black and Brown people, such as Sherman Spears and Marilyn Washington Harris, both people directly impacted by violence. Our program or our collaborative effort responds citywide, but the strategy maintains focuses in some of the targeted areas with the highest crime and violence. There are 5 elements that we see that are shared amongst these approaches. 1, focusing on identifying the population at highest risk for violence. 2, reaching out at moments when survivors are open to and in need of support, that golden moment that Mario was talking about. 3, connection by a trained, credible messenger or community member who can relate to participants and build trust quickly. 4, emphasis on building relationships. And then 5, lastly, relying on methods other than incarceration to reduce crime. Over the 3 years of the grant, we aim to serve 300 gunshot victims between the ages of 12 to 35 through our Caught in the Crossfire hospital-based intervention and counseling. Also, we aim to serve 75 formerly incarcerated and or gang impacted young people through our Pathways program. We plan to provide services to 225 people who are connected to recent homicide victims through our Gaddafi Washington project. And through our violence interrupter team, we aim to relocate 75 families in danger and to mediate approximately 350 potential violent conflicts. Also, we will be offering trauma-informed clinical mental health services or mental health counseling to all participants, and to train some of our participants also in starting to engage in the conversation of building trust with police. So that's our Advocacy for Change program. Last thing I'd say is that this grant will actually help increase that staffing for our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week response. And we also hope to increase client emergency funds for much needed on the ground, needs of these clients that we're serving. And that would be us.
Thank you so much, John. The City of Oakland.
Hi, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, good morning. This is Peter Kim. I'm the manager for the Department of Violence Prevention here in the City of Oakland. I got a couple of folks on our team here with me today. Mei Li Wong, she's going to serve as a project lead as well as a daily point of contact for this project under CalVIP. We have Ruby Aoyang, who is our fiscal representative. And of course, we're represented by all the folks on our team and our entire network of providers that we represent as well. Just for a little bit of context, the city of Oakland, like so many other cities on this call in California throughout the country, we've been hit really hard this year with violence. We were experiencing a pretty steady decline over the last 5-6 years in shootings and homicides. But this year, we took a heavy hit in terms of an increase. Just to kind of give a sense of it, as of Monday, we were at 94 homicides. This time last year, we were at 63. And our 3-year average prior to this year was around 71 for a total. So we're looking to probably hit 100 this year, and this will represent about a 49% increase in gun homicides. And this is incredibly tragic for us, especially in a year where COVID is hitting all of us in immeasurable ways. And we also know that the communities in Oakland, and I see this all over the country, the communities that are hit hardest by gun violence, hit hardest by COVID, are also the same communities that are hit by poverty, by joblessness, homelessness, domestic violence, and intimate partner violence. So it's just really important, I think, and encouraging on this call to see so many folks recognize this for what it is. It's a public health crisis. And to be able to approach all of these forms of violence in a way that is informed by public health approaches, that prioritize efforts that are alternatives to law enforcement, knowing that we can't just use law enforcement strategies as a way to approach this public health crisis of violence. It's just really inspiring. And I just want to say that I'm hearing from all the amazing cities on this call and all the work that they're doing that are lifting up trauma-informed practices that understand really, I love the way that Mario said it. We definitely have the terms and language to call it from, cognitive behavioral training programs to, intensive case management. But, Mario said we're just loving up on these people. And I think folks on this call are really showing that it takes that type of relationship-centered work that is trauma-informed, that's focused on those at the center of the violence, and providing alternatives other than just law enforcement. And I think that just strengthens the work overall, encouraged by the law enforcement agencies on here who are really looking to partner with community-based organizations. And I say all that to really just emphasize, I appreciate CalVIP making the shifts they have over the last several years to lift up the expertise of those in the community doing this work, allowing them to enter this funding stream in much more intentional and strategic ways, because it really does show that we are all recognizing what so many of us on the ground have been seeing for decades, that it really does take a public health oriented approach to deal with the crisis at hand. So I say that as really just because I salute everybody on this call. So many folks that I've had the pleasure and honor of working with throughout the state. So here in Oakland, the Department of Violence Prevention is the department that I represent, and it's a new thing. It was only a couple of years ago that the city of Oakland, our city council, approved a Department of Violence Prevention, and it was actually just about a year ago now that we were able to hire our first chief of violence prevention, Guillermo Cespedes, who has kind of been around the world in different places doing his work, but he also, I think, really cut his teeth in LA. So I know the folks in LA are probably familiar with Chief Cespedes' work as well. And it's really a way to kind of lift up the crisis of violence in Oakland and to focus our resources and our attention, our expertise there. The DVP helps continue kind of a longer history of work here in Oakland that includes everything from, we have violence prevention and intervention efforts that include violence interruption happening in the communities in real time, as well as hospital-based intervention programs, as well as homicide response. That work is represented by a grantee on this call. That was John Torres and Youth Alive who just spoke. We have a lot of the grief counseling and grief support that is supported, that is provided to family members and friends and loved ones of homicide victims. That's represented by Catholic Charities, the East Bay. They're also on this call. They're another CalVIP recipient. So much of our work is really modeled over a lot of the great stuff that's been talked about from Advanced Peace and Khalid and his folks and Devon Bogan. But we also know that Safe Passages, who was also in our network, like Youth Alive and CCB, is another recipient. So we're really just building on the strength and the expertise and the experience of so many folks. We actually represent a network of over 21 organizations throughout Oakland. And it's really all those strengths and resources and expertise that we're bringing to bear on the work that the DVP does. You know, we also do intensive case management, what we call life coaching, to work with those at the center of violence. We have employment and education supports for those at the center of violence. We also have a mandate to specifically work with those who are attacking gender-based violence. So we have supports around outreach and crisis response, emergency housing, and other kind of wraparound services for those who are impacted by intimate partner violence and commercial sexual exploitation. And where we can, we also try to augment all this work, this direct service work, with employment and housing resources, mental health support, as well as substance abuse counseling through our just relationships that we have throughout the city and county. And we also try to really strengthen our network providers by offering training and capacity building opportunities. But this grant in particular is going to support our partnership with the Oakland ceasefire work. And that is a partnership with OPD, with community-based organizations, particularly the faith community. And the way that we come in as a department is to connect those who have been identified as the most active in the gun violence, both as those who are victims of the violence and those who are creating the harm. And then we are receiving those referrals from ceasefire, and then we go ahead and plug them into our network of all the support services that I just described. So what CalVIP is going to do is we're going to be able to augment and expand and improve the ability of ceasefire to communicate with those identified at the highest risk of gun violence. This is by using community-based credible messengers along with faith-based representatives to assist in this alternative way of delivering a message of risk and consequence, and then encourage them to participate in services. And if they agree, that's when we receive their referrals and plug them into the network of life coaches, as well as other supportive services that I described. This grant's also going to help us build up our staffing to improve our data collection and analysis processes by adding a person who can really crunch the numbers to show whether or not the work we're doing is effective. It's also going to go towards funding OPD to improve their procedural justice efforts to strengthen their community and police relations. And just overall, you know, our goals through CalVIP is to continue to increase the participation of folks in our life coaching and supportive services, to reduce criminal justice involvement and victimization, just to improve their overall outcomes for the participants, and to also help strengthen those community and police relationships. So yeah, thank you, BSCC, for this opportunity to continue this work and strengthen it here in Oakland.
Thank you, Peter. And the last grantee will be Salinas. Jose, were you able to jump back on the call?
Hi, Katrina.
Hi.
Yes, I was. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for a great 3 days of orientation. You know, the BSCC really does bring together a lot of great programs that we often learn from each other. And there's so much learning that happens. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for that. My name is Jose Arriola with the City of Salinas. I'm the Community Safety Administrator here. The City of Salinas is a small, maybe mid-sized city, lies less than an hour drive south from San Jose. We are the seat of Monterey County and the largest city here with about 160,000 people. We have about a third of the population of the entire county. Unfortunately, there hasn't been anything small about the rate of violence that we've experienced here. Unfortunately, being I think the largest street gang presence of one of the largest prison gangs in the California prison system, Nuestra Familia. And it's been, I think, a big job to reduce violence here in Salinas over the last decade that we certainly haven't done alone. Through a collaborate called the Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, we pull together over 60 agencies that represent education, nonprofits, community-based organizations that really work together to reduce violence. And we're able to identify the gaps in services in our city and our county, And we use those gaps in services as a way to see what we need to bring back to the city. And we generally use the BSCC grant opportunity to do just that. And so this year we were able to apply for funding to bring important opportunities to our youth most impacted by violence and gangs and most involved, because that's often, what we don't provide is opportunity. And so I love hearing that from so many of my colleagues here on the call over the last 3 days, is that we're bringing opportunity. We're loving on this community that very often only gets consequences. And so we're going to bring job training and opportunities through our tiny homes construction program with our partners Rancho Cielo Youth Campus. We're going to teach kids how to construct homes, and it's a very marketable skill. And they can go out and get some really good paying jobs with those skills. And that's mainly targeted to youth who are referred to this program by probation. And so these are already justice systems involved youth, and we're trying to give them, again, really neat opportunity. In many other communities, you'd have to pay a lot of money to be a part of a program like this, and this will be offered completely free thanks to the grant funding opportunity through BSCC. In addition, we're expanding our reentry assistance for determined youth, or READY program, with our partners California Youth Outreach, which are working with youth directly in our youth center and juvenile hall to help make sure they have a smooth transition back out and they don't come back, but that they have access to the opportunities and many different types of supports that would help them make better, have better opportunities and better choices to make, right, and to choose from. That's really what it's about, whether it be to mental health services, mentoring, access to some small support to find housing or pay their light bill or help their family out. It's all those little things that these programs will help support. We learned so much from my big brothers over in San Jose, Mario and Israel, Peter in Oakland. I really want to shout out Advanced Peace, because they're very values based around how we treat this population, how we work with them, and we're using those principles in how we do our own street outreach. Even though we're not able to yet bring Advanced Peace to the city of Salinas, they certainly have informed not just our program, but it sounds like many others across the city. And just, Youth Alive, big shout out. They help support our development of our own hospital-based violence prevention program when we got a trauma unit 5 years ago. And so really want to just shout out the legacy of all the grantees out here and how we're informing the great work that's being done all over the state. And so I did want to say that we have I've been joined over the last 3 days by our awesome partners in our finance department, Julia Estrada and Mary Lagasca, who will be handling all the reimbursement work and the finance work. Our incredible evaluators out of the Monterey County Department of Health. It's the first time we're bringing them on as evaluators. They have incredible expertise, and Linda McGlone, Krista Hani and her team there. They'll be joined by longtime evaluator Jan Roll, independent contractor, who we're excited to continue to have on our team. And of course, our partners over at Rancho Cielo Youth Campus and California Youth Outreach, who will be doing all the heavy lifting, really, as we help them manage the grant and this incredible opportunity. So thank you again. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jose. With that, that concludes what we had on the agenda for today. Is there any last minute questions to either other grantees or to myself, for Helene, or any of the analysts that are on the call?
I just want to say you guys did a great job, because I will be honest and say I was dreading a 3-day conference on Zoom. And I did have to come to Sacramento a couple of times before. So this was brilliant. And we got a lot out of it, I think. I know I did. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I really have to, give credit to Helene and Kimberly, who is the field representative for YRG. They kind of took me under their wings, let me watch their grantee orientation. And Ricardo Goodrich, obviously, our deputy director, he went over my PowerPoints a couple different times to make sure that I was prepared. So thank you to my colleagues and to Ricardo. And thank you to all of you guys. You guys are doing such amazing work, and I'm excited to get cohort 3 going, and just see where we end up and what great work you guys do throughout this 3 years. All right, if there's no other questions, I want to say thank you guys so much for sticking it out for the 3 days. And I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.